In this video, I'm going to be sharing watercolor hacks that actually work. They'll make your life much easier and they'll make you enjoy it much more. Let's go! To create clean lines on watercolor, you can use regular duct tape so you don't have to spend more money buying proper duct tape for watercolor. If you use this hack, it won't be as sticky, so it won't rip your paper. So basically what you have to do is take as much as you want and put it against your clothing. And as such, you will pick up fibers, it won't be as sticky, and it won't rip your paper when you peel it off. And you'll get clean lines and clean edges, which will make your painting look more professional. Tip number 2 is to have 2 containers with water. The second one should be bigger than the first one, but it's a preference, I guess. So you're gonna need 2 because in this one, you're gonna put your loaded brushes and clean them off first. And in the second one, you're going to rinse them off and pick up water from here to put in your watercolors, to activate them and to dilute them and stuff. So the third trick is to use a regular syringe to pick up water from your container and activate your paints with. So imagine red, you just fill it up and then you grab your brush and you swish it around until it's activated. So the fourth tip is to use the wet on wet technique to create a smooth gradient. So you saturate your square with water, then you pick up the color that you want for the bottom and then for the top, and you do as I show. If you notice that you put too much water, you can always blot it with a tissue. So like this, for example. To create a flat wash, you can simply use less water and paint in all directions with your paint like this. If you make little X's, you will disperse the paint better and it will create a flatter wash. So the fifth tip is to line your actual drawing with a watercolor pencil from whatever color you're going to use for the figure. So imagine you're making a banana. You're going to use yellow instead of black, and that way when you color it in, it won't bleed, like the graphite won't stain your actual paint. To clean up any mistakes, you can simply take your wet brush and pass it on top until they vanish. You can see here when your paper is not good quality, it will seize and it will lift up, creating these air pockets below. To avoid these things, you can simply get heavier paper and cotton-based paper. When you want to preserve white areas, without paint, you can use masking fluid. It's a latex byproduct that you can rip out once it's done, and it will preserve the white below. You can put it in the lid, and that way you don't have to be wasting a little cup. Also, you should apply it with a rubber brush, and that way it won't ruin your bristles from your brushes. While we leave that to dry, we can make the color stronger. So we just grab the same paint and we do the same thing. While your paints are still wet and you want to lift something, you can use a tissue rolled up however you want and just dab on it. With this you can create cloud effects, water effects, smoke, vapor, steam. It makes these light lifted patches. You can also use a wet brush to achieve the same effect, like this. With this technique, you can lift sections while leaving the rest undisturbed. Your paper reacts to water as poorly as this one. You should avoid oversaturating it with water. You should also dry it and then put it below a heavy book so it flattens out as much as possible. I'll try to proceed even though the paper is not cooperating. Anyway, you can add salt to your wet wash, but not very wet, just wet, to create funny effects. So just sprinkle in some salt and we'll see what comes out of it. They're supposed to be like star effects. While we wait for that to dry, let's work on the masking fluid. If one of your colors has more water than the other one, it will start to make these puddled effects. If you want to fix this, you can simply take out as much water as you can and try to reblend it properly. Once your painting is dry, you can use wash to create different effects on it. Since wash can be very transparent or very opaque depending on the quantity of water you add, you can make very different effects. You can use a mixture of wash and water to create a splatter effect on it. You simply load your brush with a mixture and you flick it like this. The problem of doing this is that you don't control the size of the droplets. You can try different hardnesses of brushes, you can try toothbrushes, and they will all give you different effects. You can also use gouache to create a stronger highlight in watercolor, because if you use watercolor, it will be very transparent, but like this, it will be much more opaque. With watercolor, you don't need to do wet on wet gradient if you want. You can simply paint on the color that you desire and fade it out like this, let it dry, and then on top put the other color you desire on the opposite direction. To create a type of jewel or wave-like effect, you can use a bit of plastic wrap and simply put it on top of it while it's still wet and leave it to dry in the shape that you desire. You can drag the paint into whatever shapes you want, and then when it dries, you will leave the little effects. As you can see, gouache can be very opaque if you don't add a lot of water to it. As you can see, you don't need to do it wet on wet. You can do one color first and then the other color, and the gradient is still the same. The salt made a funny pattern. Sadly, I think the paper wasn't the best, so it didn't capture how great it would actually be. Now that the masking fluid is dry, we can remove it. We can do it with our finger. We can also remove it with a rubber tool, like this. I find this to be more difficult. You can make effects on more than just watercolor with masking fluid. You can grab a pen and will still protect the paper. So when you remove it, it's still blank below. As you can see, it ripped the paper because the paper wasn't good quality. So it's as important to have good paper as it is to have good materials in general. There's no point in having really good watercolor if your paper is not going to be the greatest, because then this will happen. So finally, last trick. Before I had these watercolors, I used to use these ones in tube, but they all dry out and then you can't use them. They don't get out. They're solid inside of this. So you can cut this off, put them inside of these pens, which is basically empty ones of these. When you end them, you just save it, and then you can put the powder inside of this, crunch it up, add water, and then you can use it as these watercolors. And that way, even if they dry out, it's fine because you can just add water. Inside of here, it's impossible to add water, so it's just wasteful. So let's do it. I chose these colors because they go together, and I could try to make a different color that would be all of them mixed. Can you see the powder? Well, it's really dry. That's way too much. Doesn't have to be perfect because it'll be melted by the water. I'm going to try to add some purple to see what color it will turn out to be. Oh, that's dirty. Careful not to cut yourself. Okay, this is super weird, so it's plastified. Ugh. Okay, I don't think I can do the same with this. I guess maybe it depends on the brands. This feels more like acrylic than watercolor, to be honest. Strange. Well, going to the trash. Anyway. When you're doing this, if you have some mica powder, you can put it inside and then it will make sparkles. So when you paint, you will have little sparkles inside. You mix it well to dissolve everything. Oops. A little hard without spilling. As you can see, I already have swatches of other colors here. Let's try it out while it's wet, and then I'll let it dry, and then I can try it out again while it's dry. Not bad. With this trick, you can customize your own colors. So if you don't have exactly the color that you want, you can mix it and save it like this. So, update. It's been a few days and now I'm gonna try it out. It's dry, so let's see how it turns out. You can see this paint has an interesting texture and that it doesn't really bleed like the other ones. Probably because it's not very good quality and the particles are bigger, and maybe it doesn't have a lot of binder. But if you do this with higher quality paints, it will definitely behave better. I hope you enjoyed. I know it wasn't perfect, but I hope you still like and subscribe. Thank you.